Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about how to create a walk cycle animation from the front view for any character you want. Well, without further ado, let's bring up the character. The chosen character in this video was obtained from FreePic, and as it's clear, you can download this file for free. I use Illustrator to split up the character's different parts, so it will be easier to animate those parts. Well, I cut the character layers from this composition and paste them into the main comp. As you might know, to animate a character, the best way is to use some references. That's why I made this reference file, so we can create a walk cycle animation for this character according to this reference. Then I move it below the layers. The way to create a walk cycle animation from the front view is exactly like the side view. We have to create different poses for our character based on the reference, just like when we did it for the side view one. Well, to make the work easier, let's start by animating the body. I select all the layers, then shy them, then bring out the body and the reference layer from the shy mode. I solo the body layer. The anchor point of the body should be placed here, because I want to make the body rotate. I open its position, create a keyframe here to be the contact pose keyframe, and I set the frame rate of the comp on 24 frames. I go to frame 24 and paste the first keyframe here. So these two keyframes will be for the first and last contact poses. I make a few markers here and specify the poses frame. The middle contact will be exactly the middle of these 24 frames, that is frame 12. The passing pose will be placed between the two contacts. In between the first contact and the passing pose, that is frame 3, there will be the down pose. The next down pose will be 3 frames ahead of the second contact. The up pose should be 3 frames after the passing pose. Well, the next thing I have to do is create the down pose. In the down pose, the body of the character is a bit lower than the contact pose, so I lower the body. The next pose I have to create is the up pose, so I don't need to create the passing poses for the body. So let's go to the up pose and move up the body from the contact pose, which is this keyframe. I select the 2 keyframes and paste them here, so the next down and up poses are created. I make the first and last keyframes to the continuous bezier. I trim the work area right here, and let's see how it turned out. As you can see, the body is going up and down, which is exactly what happens to the body when a character is walking. After that, let's go and make some animation for the legs. In order to create animation for the legs from the front view without any problem and in a much easier way, first I should create this legs part with the shape tool. In the stroke section, I set both line cap and line join to round. I decrease the opacity so I can see what's happening under it. And the end of the stroke should be a little bit thinner, so I set the end length on 100 and the end width on 98. I think 97 is better. I duplicate this layer for the shin and I put the upper point down here. I go to the contents, duplicate this shape and rename them so they can be recognizable. I entered the blue shape. In the stroke, I set the line cap to butt cap. And to make it shorter, I add a trim path modifier to it. Well, after that, I parent the white path to the blue path. So when I change the blue path, the white path would change along with it. And to make this lower part thinner, I go to the taper, I set the start length on 100, and the start width should be around 90. Then I do the same for the taper of the white shape. And if I want, when I thin the blue shape, the white shape thins too, I must parent the start width of the white shape to the blue one. And now, if you look closely, I'm just changing the start width of the blue shape, but the white shape is changing too. I create a keyframe for this, so I can change it later. Well, I select all the layers, set the opacity to 100. As you see, once I move the lower part of the leg, no problem will happen to the knee. So, to read the leg, we need to parent the points of the shape to null object. For this, I select the thigh layer. In the shape, I select the path. In the Windows menu, I run the create nulls from path script. Then I click on point follow nulls. As you can see, two nulls are created. One is for the first point and another one for the second one. Upon moving each null, its point will move as well. I set their scale to 30. Then I rename them. And I do the same for the shin. As you see, when I move this null, both of the shapes follow null, because I have parented the white shape to the blue. I select both null and set their scales to 30. And since I have two nulls here, I parent the shin null to the thigh null, so I can control the knee by the thigh null. So I parent this null to this one and hide it. And then I can animate both these shapes by just moving this null. I make the body visible. Let me decrease the opacity to see how it has placed. Well, I parent the knee null to the thigh null. And then I parent this null to the body. So when the body moves, the leg will move as well. I make the reference visible and I start to make the leg poses for the character. In the contact pose, as you can see, the ankle of the leg is on this line. In the down pose, it's in the same position. In the passing pose, it's again in the same position. So in these three poses, the ankle is not moving. Well, I select the ankle null and open its position. Create a keyframe for it in contact pose. And until passing pose, it's not changing. Then I easy ease the keyframes. As you see, from the up pose, the ankle moves upward. In the down pose, it's much upper. In the passing pose, it goes even upper. And finally, in the up pose, it goes lower. So until the passing pose, the ankle moves upward. So I come here and move it up. And in the contact pose, it goes back to its initial position. So in the contact pose, I duplicate the first keyframe here. And I make the first and last keyframes to continuous bezier. Well, let's take a look and see how it turned out. It's good so far. Let's animate the knee. As you can see, in the contact pose, the knee is straight. In the down pose, it becomes slightly bent, and again in the up pose, it will be straight. So I create a keyframe for its position in the contact pose. In the down pose, it becomes a little bent, and again in the up pose, it will be straight. Then again in the contact pose, the knee will be bent. The same goes with the down and passing pose. Between the passing and the last contact pose, it slowly becomes straight again. So until the next passing pose, I bend the leg. This time I bend it more than before. And again in the last contact, it backs to its initial position. Okay, let's see how it is. It's good for now. Let's create the shoe. I make the shoe visible. Well, I don't need these layers anymore, so I delete them. I get back to the first contact pose and match the shoe with the leg. And I place the anchor point right here. I move this layer above the leg layers. Then I convert it to shape. And now I should change its shape. Well, after adjusting the shape, I don't need group 6, so I delete it. I create keyframes for the path of the shapes because I want to create different views of the shoe. As you see, the shoe doesn't change in the down and passing pose, so I don't need to touch it. But in the second passing pose, it's different, and we need to see the upper view of the shoe. So before doing anything, I parent this shoe layer to this null, so it will be moved along it. Then I go to the second passing pose, and now I have to create this sort of shape for the shoe. Okay, so if you're not a designer, you can easily use references that are available on the internet. So I import the reference here, I move it below the shoe layer, I decrease its opacity so I can easily see the layer. And precisely I need to create this shape for the shoe. Okay, the next view I need to create is for the contact pose, which is the front of the shoe is high. So I go to the contact pose, press U key to see the keyframes. I move these keyframes to the down pose. And now I have to reshape the shoe according to this reference. I place the lowest part of the shoe above the other parts, so I can make such a shape. Now I match different views of the shoe according to different poses. Okay, it's good on the down pose, and this passing pose is also the same. From the up pose, it changes until the passing pose. I duplicate these keyframes for the down pose too. Here I move it down and change its shape a little. For the last contact pose, I also paste these keyframes. And for here, I paste down pose keyframes. Okay, let's see how it's moving. I also move these a bit back. It's alright. The next thing is that when the leg reaches the second contact, it is placed at the back, so this part should be smaller. For this, I make the shin visible and press U key. As you remember, I had created a keyframe for the start width, so I can make the lower part of the shin smaller. In the first contact, the size of the shin remains the same. In the next contact, the leg is placed behind the character, so it needs to be smaller. So I set it on 60. And at the last contact, it should be the same as the first one, and I easy ease the keyframes. So when the leg goes back, the shoe gets smaller. That's why I make the scale of the shoe visible and make a keyframe for it. And I create other keyframes for the contact poses. In the second contact, the shoe must be rather smaller. Hence, I make it smaller so it fits the overall size of the leg. Alright, let's see how it goes. As you can see, the leg has a depth right now, and it shows perfectly that the leg is moving back and forth. I make the layers visible, and for creating the left leg, I select the layers related to the right leg and duplicate them. I put them on top and change their color. After duplicating the layers, unfortunately the new points won't be connected to the new nulls. So if I want to connect them, I select the shape layer. In the FX control panel, I have to define the new null layers. Okay, this effect is for the lower point of the shin. That's why I define this null object to it. So I come here and select layer 6. So just to make sure, I select layer 6 and move it. As you can see, it works well. But if I move this null, nothing happens because it's not connected yet. And for this one, I select layer 5, and now if I try to move the null, the upper part moves as well. I do the same for the thigh and connect the points to the null objects. Okay, it's alright now. To flip the new leg layers, I create a new null object and place it right here. For now, I parent this null object that's already parented to the body to the new null object. And also I do the same for this null object. After that, I select this null, right click on it, and from transform, I select flip horizontal. I delete the null object. Then I parent this null to the body. Let's see how it turned out. As you can see, both of the legs move together. For fixing the movement of the other leg, firstly I select these layers and then press U key so I can see the keyframes, and then I loop these keyframes. I right click on it and select the copy expression only and paste it for the other properties. And for looping the keyframes of the path, I need to use this specific expression. Well, I paste the intended expression here. Then I right click on the path and select the copy expression only and then paste it for the other paths. Well, after looping the keyframes, I select all the layers related to the left leg and move it back, so that the last keyframes will be placed on the middle contact. Now, if you take a look, you can see that the movement of the leg has been corrected. I move the body layer above the leg layers. Now let's create the arms. I delete the layers that I don't need. I make the right arm visible and hide the other layers for now. I create the arm just like what I did for the legs. Okay, I delete the useless layers and just keep the fingers. Then I convert it to shape. Now I should parent each point of this shape to a null object. I make the body visible. This layer should be parented to this null. Let me change the name so it will be better to understand. I place its anchor point right here. Then I parent it to this null. This null should also be parented to this null, and this one to this one, and the last one to the body layer. And it should be lowered a little bit. I make the reference visible and see how the arm is placed in the contact pose. As you can see, it's straight. In the second contact, the arm is bent, and then in the last contact, it goes back to its initial position. So I open its scale and rotation and create a keyframe for them in the first contact. In the second contact, I make another keyframe. Then I go back to the first contact and decrease the Y scale and set it to 25. Since it's placed at the back, its length should be shorter. And here, the end width should be decreased like this. I forgot to parent the end width of the black shape to the yellow one, just like what I did for the leg part. So I parent this end width to another one. Here I decrease the end width and increase the trim path. I also animate the scale of this layer. Here its scale should be decreased. Well, in the next contact, the arm should be slightly bent. Then I make the keyframes easy ease. I paste these keyframes right here as well. I also should paste the scale keyframe of the hand here. Now, just to make the rotation of the arm slightly better, I can use the reference. I make their keyframes easy ease, and I paste the first keyframe here. I also make a keyframe for the rotation of this null. Here it's a little bit behind, and here it gets back to 0. And at the end I paste the first keyframe there. Let's see how I did it. Okay, for the left arm, I do the same that I did for the left leg. Then I flip it horizontally using a null object. And finally, I parent this null to the body. It just needs to be a little upper. I change their colors and press U key to see the keyframes. Then I loop the keyframes just like before. Then for looping the pads, I use the same expression that I use for the shoe pads. Well, I select the left arm layers and bring them back so the movement of the left arm would be in sync with the other parts. I have to loop the right arm as well. In order for the movement of the wrist to be delayed a little bit and have overlapping animation, I select the nulls of the wrists, then make the keyframes visible, and move the keyframes here. I delete the useless layers, and let's see how the animation is. To make the work better, I can also create some animation for the body pads. For this, I convert the body layer into a shape and delete the previous layer. And since the new body has been created, I need to parent all these nulls to this new body. After that, I open the body layer and make keyframes for the path of the shapes. I press U key and select all the keyframes and move them for the first contact pose. In the first passing pose, that is when the character is standing on his right leg, I select these points and move them slightly to the right. Well, I delete the keyframes of the properties that didn't change because we don't need them. Again, I press U key, then I go to the next passing pose and paste the contact pose keyframes here. Then I select all these points and move them to the right. And at the end, I paste the first keyframes. I make all keyframes easy except for the contact keyframes. They should be set to continuous bezier. I move the body above the arms layers. I don't need these shapes, so I delete them. After that, I need to parent the head layers to the body. Let's make them visible. I parent the mouth, eyebrows, and eyes layers to the head and move them above all the other layers. And I place its anchor point down here and parent the head layer to the body. I place the shadow a little bit lower. To make the animation more appealing, I make a keyframe for the rotation of the body. In the passing pose, when the character is standing on his right leg, I rotate it to the left. I set it on -3. In the next passing pose, I set it to 3, and in the last contact, I set it to 0. I make all the keyframes easy ease except for the first and last keyframe, which should be set to continuous bezier. And here, to make sure that the leg wouldn't be bent, I change X position. I separate the position and delete the X keyframes. I make a keyframe in the beginning. In the passing pose, I move it a little bit to the left. In the second passing pose, I paste the first keyframes and move it slightly to the right. And then I make these keyframes easy ease. To see the pocket completely, I duplicate the body and place it above the hand layers and mask its pocket. Okay, let's animate the head. In the beginning, the rotation should be 0. In the passing pose, it should be set to -5. In the next passing pose, it should be on 5. And in the last contact, it should be on 0. Then I loop them. And to have an overlap animation, I move the layer a little back. And for animating the eyes, I convert the right eye to the shape. I make a keyframe for this path. After 4 frames, I change the path like this. And to cover the eye with the eyelid, I make a shape here like this. And here the shape should be like this. I put the shape below the eyelash layer. I press U key, select these 2 keyframes and make them easy ease. 3 frames ahead, I duplicate the keyframes and reverse them. And I make a keyframe for the position of the eyebrows. Here I move them down and then easy ease them. To make the other eye, I just have to duplicate this layer and flip it horizontally and move it right here. Well, I also loop the remaining values, so I can animate the background as well. I extend the work area to see if the looping works correctly or not. Although I need to work on the animation of the eyes. To animate them, I don't need to loop them. Just duplicating the keyframes should do the job. Well, I make the background layers visible. The first frame is like this. So I come here and trim the work area right here, so there won't be any problem when the animation repeats. Well, let's make some shadows for the shoes. To do this, I make a shape right here and make a keyframe for its position. I set its color to black, then I set its opacity on 30 and place it below the shoe layers. I also increase its scale. Here again, it returns to its position. Here it gets a little bit smaller. I also loop these values. Then I duplicate this layer. I create a null. I parent the second shadow to the null and flip it horizontally. I press the U key and move the layer backward to match it with the left click. Using the null, I adjust the position of the shadow. Then I delete the null object. And now to animate the scene, I select this light and make it 3D. Then I place it here, increase its scale. In the beginning, I make a keyframe for its position, and in second 5, I move it to the behind and place it down there. Let's see how it turned out. I adjust the animation path. Its size should be slightly bigger. To make it slower, I place this keyframe here on frame 20. Okay, it's alright. To have multiple light posts, I use the echo effect. I set its number to 10 and increase the echo time. I move the layer a little back and set this to -4. And now to loop it, I go to the beginning of the timeline, and as you can see, the light post is right here. So I go for red until the next light post comes exactly here. And then I trim the work area right there. As you can see, the loop is seamless. Well, I duplicate this layer and create a null and parent it to the new null. Then I flip the null horizontally.